Well, I want to introduce you to Giancarlo Guerrera. He is a voiceover artist and he works out of Rome, Italy. And I'm always just so impressed and just happy that I'm able to work with people all around the world that speak a different language than I do. And, and we could still communicate with translation apps, and we could still work together, and I could still help them, even though they're on the other side of the globe. It's a pretty cool thing. So, don't hesitate if you speak another language other than English. For your voiceovers, if that's your main business is doing voiceovers in other languages, it's really just based on the sound, right? So if you're interested in working with me and you want to send your raw audio so you can hear what it sounds like with my processing on it, by all means, I want to invite you to do that. Don't worry about speaking another language. And I'll illustrate that here with Giancarlo. First of all, he's got a fantastic room, and I think that's really the focus of this particular video. I want to show you that great acoustic treatment in your recording space for voiceover translates to a great raw recording, and it translates to an even better optimized processed sound. And one of the bizarre things is you don't have to have really expensive, great equipment if you have a well or properly treated, acoustically treated room. Giancarlo is, he doesn't have a website, but he sent me his LinkedIn page, and I'm going to put a link to that in the description of the video. So if you want to say hi to him or just check out what he does further, you can do that. But let's look at the equipment he's using. He has an Aston Spirit microphone. This is not a $100 microphone, but it's also not a $3,000 boutique microphone. And so he's using the Aston Spirit going into a first generation Focusrite. Now we're on the fourth generations at the time of this video. And the 18i6, gosh, I'm not sure what year that came out. I just remember how cool they looked when I first saw them. But by all means, Focusrite and the Scarlett line have improved their preamps. The noise level is much lower. The analog to digital, digital to analog conversion is much better. The quality, the fidelity is better. And with that said, this Focusrite 18i6 first generation still sounds fantastic. And I think the idea here is that nothing that you do, no equipment, no plugins, no software, no workflow, is going to improve your recorded voice sound better than a proper acoustically treated recording space. That's going to improve your voiceover sound the most. And if we look at the room that Giancarlo is working in, he has a rock wool suspended from the ceiling. He has other sound absorbing panels on the other walls. And the size of the room it's kind of a mid-size room, which is something that I say is always a good idea. And when I asked him to describe his challenges, he says, I'm searching for the best audio quality in order to send my voice for documentaries, commercial ads, corporate tutorials, and audiobooks. And we're going to have a chance to listen to his raw audio and processed audio coming up here. And we'll walk through what I've done, and we'll talk about why. Before I dissect and kind of go through all the details of his recording space and the acoustic treatment that he has in his recording space, I want you to hear the quality that we're getting from just not processed. There's no EQ, there's no compression. I want you to hear what the raw file sounds like. And just before we do that, I'm going to run through this really quick. We've got 2 meters here. You see 2 meters. They are the U-lean meter. I've got 2 instances, one on the top of the stack here and one on the bottom of the effects chain, the stack here. And they're the same meter, but the reason why I stack them and I use 2 side by side like this is because this one, the audio flows down, by the way. It starts at the top and it goes down. Most DAWs, actually, I have not run into a DAW that doesn't work like this. The audio starts from the top and it flows down, okay? So what we're hearing is this, the audio is traveling through the first U-lean meter, which is this one here, and we're getting a reading. It's showing us the level of the audio. Then I put the second U-lean meter, which is the one on the right side here, and that shows me the difference. So if I add energy or subtract energy with EQ and compression, I'm able to see the power difference, the level difference. And at every step, I gain stage. That's what it's called. At every step, if I remove some energy from the audio with an EQ, I replace that energy at the end of the cue, boosting the output. And I'll show you how that works. But the reason is a couple things. You're going to get the best sound by doing it that way, but also when you gain stage it and you're getting an equal level going in and coming out of whatever processor that you're using, when you hear the processing activated and then you deactivate it, all you're hearing is the difference of what that plugin is doing, what the processing is doing. You're not hearing a level change because louder is better. Usually for human hearing, if we hear something that's a little bit louder, we naturally assume it's better. It's just the way that our hearing works. It also helps me examine further the difference in what my EQ is doing, or the difference in what my de-essing or compressing or gating is doing. So now that you know what's on the screen here, and by the way, I'm working in Apple's Logic Pro. This is my DAW of choice. I use a ton of different DAWs because I work with so many different people that use different DAWs. I feel that a DAW, or a digital audio workstation, or the software that you record your audio in, is a personal choice. To me, Apple's Logic Pro is very intuitive, and I've been using it for a long time, so I feel very comfortable with it. But the right DAW for you is the one that you feel the most comfortable with, I believe. I think that plays a huge part. Okay, so now we're going to listen to Giancarlo's raw audio. This is the quality he's getting with no effects.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada.
So why am I saying that sounds so good? And you may listen to that and say that there may be some problems with it, or you don't like the way it sounds or whatever. But to me, this is a very balanced recording, which means that the low frequencies, the mid frequencies, the high frequencies, and everything in between are equally represented. And that happens because the reflections that bounce off the walls in your recording space have been absorbed. They have been absorbed by the acoustic treatment, and they don't get a chance. His voice is not getting a chance to hit the microphone, pass the microphone, bounce off the walls, and then go back into the microphone. A reflection hits back into the microphone at a slight delay. That will offset some of the frequencies and make resonances in some frequency spaces. What happens is, if you don't absorb the reflections that are coming from your mouth after they pass the microphone and hit the wall and bounce back into the mic, if you don't absorb those reflections interact with your pure voice. That causes all sorts of problems for your voice recording. I asked Giancarlo to snap a picture of his recording space, the room that he records his voiceovers in, and he sent me this. And it's really going to help, and I can kind of dissect this for you and show you why I think it sounds really, really good. First of all, the room size is probably one of the best case scenarios. It's not too small, it's not too big. He has rock wool panels, and those are these right here, the one directly behind him. You can see his microphone there on the table. That's the Aston Spirit. He has acoustic treatment to the left of him as he's facing his mic. He may have some on the right side that we can't see, but he has looks to be a mattress back there leaning against the wall. But I think the key is these dark gray acoustic panels that are directly behind him. I think that's what's doing the best job. So he's got bass traps, it looks like, in the corner, which may be foam, or they may be more rock wool, and he's got some up in the upper corner above him. That helps in those particular spaces and corners like that. A lot of the bass energy can build up. But let me just give you a quick rundown of what I think is happening in this room, and this is why we're hearing it sound so good. His first reflection point is directly in front of him, and it looks like he's got 1 to 2 inch foam panels directly in front of him. So his voice is hitting that microphone. It's passing the mic and then hitting the wall. And those foam panels, I can tell you that those are probably pretty good at absorbing high frequency reflections. They probably do an okay job absorbing mid frequency reflections, but the low frequencies do not get absorbed by this foam. Okay, it's physically too thin, and the material itself, it doesn't do a great job. Some of those low, mid, and ultra low frequencies go right through the foam, they hit the wall, and they bounce right back. So that's a problem. But he solves that issue with the rock wool panels behind him. And those look like they're about 2 inches thick. And they're made of Owens Corning 703, which is kind of a studio standard. They are designed to absorb sound pressure waves in more frequency spaces than the foam. So what's happened is the foam is capturing those high and mid frequencies. The low frequencies are bouncing off the wall in front of him, but then they're being absorbed either by the rock wool panels behind him, and the low frequencies are possibly being absorbed further by that mattress behind him. And as you can see, that's where the mic is pointing. The microphone, the pickup pattern of his Aston mic is pointing towards those panels. Now, every room is going to be different, and every situation is going to have different amount of panels. In whatever studio you're working with, you may have a different amount of surface area that you have to treat or work with. But what he's accomplished here is he has successfully used the acoustic treatment that he has in that space. From the microphone's perspective, he's absorbing all reflections in all frequency spaces. So there's no high frequency reflections that the mic's picking up, mid or low frequencies. What we're hearing is pure voice. We don't hear any of those reflections. They're all being absorbed and removed from the microphone's perspective. Let's listen again now that we've kind of done a little walkthrough of his acoustic treatment and we have an idea of the room that he's in and where the mic is positioned. See if you can hear any reflections. And let me put it to you this way. Reflections that happen in a room or a space is how humans perceive depth and size. So while you're listening to this, see if you can tell how big, based only on the recording, see if you can hear how big the room is. Do you have any idea? Does the audio that you hear give you any idea of how big the room is that he is recording in?
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada.
In my opinion, you can't hear any reflections. In my opinion, you don't have any idea of how big that room is. It just sounds like the voices in your head, which is a great sound for a voiceover artist that is trying to relay some type of message and convey some type of emotion, right? That's what we want to do. As voiceover artists, we want to inspire. We want to drive someone to feel a certain way. We want to change their emotions and take them on a journey, right? And the way to do that is to make an intimate connection, and having a reflectionless room is probably the most important thing you can do to arrive there. And all the different ways that you can do it and understanding how sound travels in a room is exactly what my acoustic treatment for voiceover training course is all about. I'm going to put a link to that in the description. Now, Giancarlo sent me his raw audio because he wanted to get a sample of what my processing sounds like. And this is something I offer for free. You can do it as well. If you go to my website, lennyb.com, you could submit your voice just like Giancarlo did. And then I apply my processing to make it sound, optimize the sound. And I'll tell you that because he has such a well-treated room, the processing sound, I think, is incredible. And that's really one of the things I wanted to illustrate here. But before we kind of go into the preset that I've created, I want to walk you through the EQ and the compression and the de-essing and the saturation and the expansion gating that we've done on his voice. I used a couple of compressors, by the way. Before we kind of walk through that and I show you the details, like kind of show you under the hood of the preset that I made for him, I want to mention one more thing just about the room. If you have a reflection in your recording space, the low frequency sound waves that come from your voice, they hit the microphone, they bounce off the wall because they go right through some thin foam, or if you've got acoustic treatment that is not absorbing low frequencies, they bounce right through that stuff and eventually find their way back into the microphone at a slight delay. Those reflections, those low frequency reflections, are not easy to hear. They reveal themselves as a boxy sound. They reveal themselves as a muddy sound or a blurred type of audio. Sometimes you just feel like, wow, I feel like there's just too much bass, or it's just not a very clear sound. A lot of times what I do with my EQ work is clearing out some of that mud. So you can kind of rebalance your muddy sound or the boxy sound with EQ, because you're going back and rebalancing the imbalances that have been made by the room. But nothing will sound better. No EQ setting is going to sound better than a well-treated room that has balanced raw audio. And I know that's kind of deep, but I do want to share this information because this is how we elevate our sound. This is how we get it. Nothing's going to get you a better sound than a well acoustically treated recording space. Everything else is a Band-Aid. So I just want to plant that in your brain as we kind of move forward here. And I'm going to show you what is really interesting is one of the clues that I get when people send me their audio because they want to improve it, and if they are identifying some type of issues that they have in their audio, one of the clues is if I have to do a substantial amount of EQ work to get a balanced sound, a lot of times that tells me, hey, we've got a room problem. There is a resonance, there is an imbalance of frequencies in the room because of a reflection problem. And so what I want to start with, before I give you all the details of the preset and play for you the sound that I've made for Giancarlo, which I think is fantastic, by the way, I want to show you how little EQ I had to do, which is vice versa. That's a clue to me when I don't have to do a lot of EQ work to get a balanced sound. That shows me, hey, this room is well treated. I'm getting balanced raw audio. What I'm going to do is bring up a flat EQ, and this is the F6 by Waves. And one of the really cool things about this EQ is its metering section. It shows you so much detailed information, which I use to help me make decisions on how to process audio when I use the F6. This has what's called an RTA, real-time analyzer, and we've got it switched on, and it shows you in real time the frequencies as they happen. So let's take a look and you'll see the lines jumping up and down here.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Tuareg.
So we see two things here. We see the vertical lines, but we also see a white horizontal line. That's an average of the frequencies, and we can actually slow that down. So let's take a look at it again, slower.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali.
What I want you to see here is, relatively speaking, that curve of that white line of the average of all the frequencies is rather flat. Now, yes, it looks curved. It's not like a completely horizontal flat line. But if you compare that to a room that does have resonance problems or has a frequency imbalance, relatively speaking, this is a pretty flat line, okay? Yes, I can still do some optimizing to balance the EQ further, but it's really minimal, right? It's and you'll see the EQ work that I've done is very, very minimal. It's not doing much to shift things around, and I'm really following my ear. But I just wanted to show you in general, when we look at this and we slow down the average, and I can even slow it down even more, you really can see, just in general, relatively speaking, the frequencies represented in this recording, when you average them out, are pretty flat, meaning we've got a good frequency response. All frequencies are being equally represented in the raw audio.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Tuareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Tuareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Mediante manopolo o selezione del profilo di guida, il conducente può modificare l'assetto della vettura.
Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the averaging back to medium, and I'm going to do a little bit of EQ work here. I'm going to do it in real time. But I've explained this before. I want to be completely transparent here. So I'm going to be doing some EQ changes, but they're going to be based on the earphones that I have on, which are not, I don't think, the most optimized reference for me, but I have to have earphones on. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to hear this and make a video at the same time as, just to produce this YouTube video. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to walk through and make some EQ changes, but these aren't the changes that I have made for the official preset that Giancarlo received from me. And I will show you that. I want to walk you through my EQ process so you understand what I'm doing and how much of it I'm doing. In general, it looked like we have a little more bass energy in this recording, but relatively speaking, it was pretty flat. But I'm going to do most of the work here in the low-mid area. Let's walk through my EQ changes here. And what I'm going to do is another one of the cool things that I really love. I think this is the best feature of the F6 is that I can move around one of these bands while it's soloed. And that just helps me put a magnifying glass and identify any frequency that I'm trying to find with my ear and seeing if it's overabundant, exaggerated compared to the other frequencies. I can solo it and move it around at the same time. That's one of the things that I've found the F6 does really well that you don't find too often in some of the other EQs. So I'm going to be using the solo function in some of these bands to locate the frequencies I'm looking for so I can attenuate them, I can lower them to balance this out even further.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Mediante manopolo o selezione del profilo di guida, il conducente può modificare l'assetto della vettura. Le sospensioni pneumatiche
I really quickly went through this and identified that there's 3 kind of spaces that I heard with my ear. And yes, being able to identify frequency bands that I think need to be evened out or balanced is a superpower of mine. Not everybody can do it. I've been doing it for years. I focus on it. I think about it constantly. And it's a talent. It's one of the things I'm really good at, which is an odd superpower to have, but it's one of my strengths. Okay, so if you didn't hear that, or if you don't know what I was listening for, it's okay, and you kind of have to train your ear to hear those imbalances. But what I found was the frequency spaces were a little bit overabundant. Now, were they bad? Were they a problem? No. And relatively speaking, like I was saying before, these EQ changes are pretty minimal, and I actually may even lighten them up a little bit more, do a little less. But I heard that there was just an overabundance, and I think it would sound more pleasing if I were to lower them. Is it totally necessary to lower them? No, I think we are now stepping our toe into the realm of art. Okay, my EQ changes may sound good to some people, and someone else's EQ changes on this material may sound better to other people. So I don't want you to feel like I'm saying, hey, this is the right way to do this, because it's not. I wouldn't say this is right. This is my way of achieving a sound that I think sounds good. So I just want to put that in perspective here, because we are definitely in the realm of artwork. Let's listen real quick, and then we're going to compare.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg.
So that sounds pretty good to me. In general, I have not done a lot of EQing here, but in order to really hear the difference between my EQ'd work and the raw file, we need to gain stage this. So the EQ work, even though it was relatively small, it is removing some energy. And so we go back to those Uline meters. This first Uline meter is giving us a particular reading of the raw file. And you can see after, I'm looking at the true peaks here on the bottom. These are the true peaks of his audio, the transients of his recorded audio. The peaks that I'm seeing are different because I've removed energy with the EQ, so I'm getting a lower reading. So in general, I'm going to say I probably bump this up about 2 dB. And so what that's going to do, this is the output, bumping up 2 dB. This is the output of the F6. So I am replenishing the energy that I've taken away from these specific bands, these frequencies. I've taken away energy in these frequencies. I'm replenishing the overall energy with the output volume. I'm adding 2 decibels of energy back coming out. So now these peak meters, now that I've added this 2 dB, these 2 true peak meters should be more similar when I play back. And then when I engage and disengage the EQ, we are only hearing the EQ change, we're not hearing the volume change.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Mediante manopolo o selezione del profilo di guida, il conducente può modificare l'assetto della vettura, fino a 70 mm, grazie alle sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali.
Now, the reason why I chose to feature Giancarlo is, one, I think he has a fantastic sounding voice, and in his room, it's properly treated, and we're getting a good raw file. But, I believe I've optimized his sound according to my ear and what I like and my tastes. I feel like I've sweetened it up just a little bit with a little bit of EQ. And I'll play it again before, I'll play it with and without the EQ changes that I've just made. But I want to focus your ears. I'll point your ears to something. I feel like the clarity is just a little bit better. We've removed some of the mud in the low frequency space between 200 and 500. And we've balanced those frequencies. Also, there's a little bit kind of a piercing kind of feel that his Aston Spirit microphone was picking up in his mic up in the 2,275 range up here with band number 4. And so let's listen again. It seems to me that the clarity, the presence, it brings the voice a little bit more forward with the EQ change, clears out some of the muddiness, and it focuses the low end a little bit better because of what it's doing is balancing, and then taking that little piercing kind of a thing out that was up in the upper mid range. Let's listen again without the EQ, and then I will engage the EQ change.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Mediante manopolo o selezione del profilo di guida, il conducente può modificare l'assetto della vettura.
I'm going to further massage these bands a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit more bass out and lower it. And then I'm also going to find, there's kind of a little mid area here that I'm finding is a little, focused, a little mid-range prevalent. I want to back that off a little bit. Let me find it with a solo.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Mediante manopolo o selezione del profilo di guida, il conducente può modificare l'assetto della vettura, fino a 70 mm, grazie alle sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali.
Okay, let's listen back to what that is like.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Mediante manopolo o selezione del profilo di guida, il conducente può modificare l'assetto della vettura.
Now, this is not exactly what I have come up with. Again, I'm EQing this through the filter of my headphones, which is not exactly right. It could change how I'm making my decisions here, and we're gonna hear the final sound in just a second. But I want to just show for you now that when we look at the averaging again, and we look at that line and some of the frequencies, you could see it's even further balanced. And I want to caution you here. This is really, really important. Let's look at the line with and without. I want you to see this is a well-treated space and it's rather flat. But I want you to see when I engage the EQ, and we are looking at the real-time analyzer post-EQ changes. So that means it can show you pre-EQ. It could show you the frequencies and their energy in the meter before the EQ changes, and you could see it post-EQ changes. And we're looking at it post, so we're going to see the difference on the meters too.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada.
So the changes that I've made with the EQ further flatten out the frequency response. But caution, I need to emphasize this for you and really draw your attention and caution you here, because this is important. The real-time analyzer, the frequency guide, the information, the data that any meter gives you, the data the real-time analyzer is showing you with all the frequencies and that flat line, that is secondary. Your ears should drive you to make the final decision, and we use the data as a secondary input to add into what our ears are hearing, okay? In this situation, the changes, you'll notice that I made the changes first according to my ear, and then I looked at it on the line afterwards. I said, yeah, that supports what my ears heard. It's showing me further a flat response. It's just confirming the decisions that my ears helped me make. I hope that makes sense to you and you understand any of the data that you get from meters, from analyzers and all this stuff is secondary. Your ears are the final decision. That's the way I work. That's the way a lot of producers work. And I And I suggest you consider working that way as well if you're doing EQing and you're learning about this stuff. All right, now we're looking at, on the left side is the EQ changes that I just made using my headphones. And on the right side are the EQ changes that I made in the final custom processing preset I used for Giancarlo's audio. These EQ changes that were part of the final processing preset were done in a properly treated studio space using high-quality studio reference monitors that are flat. So consider this real quick. If you have reflections in your recording space that can cause problems when you record your voice, right? Those reflections in low, mid, high frequency reflections, they interact with your pure voice and they cause imbalances, right? That can happen when you're recording. It can also happen when you are playing back and listening to the audio. If you're listening to your audio in a poorly treated room, those reflections are interacting and causing imbalances. They're filtering out some frequencies or amplifying other frequencies to give you a less than true sound of the audio that's coming from your speakers. So my point is it works both ways. But this is what you need to take away from this. When you have a properly and well-treated, acoustically treated recording space, you also have a great listening space where you can do production. That's what a recording studio is. When you go to a studio, the room is designed to have no parallel walls, so the reflections are either absorbed or they're dispersed evenly. So you're recording and listening back in a truly flat space to make the right decisions. Because if you have frequency spaces that are louder than they should be, and it's not a true representation of what's actually coming out of the speakers, you'll make wrong decisions when you're EQing. So that kind of is what is illustrated here with these two EQs. This one on the right is the final EQ changes that I made, but they're pretty similar. I would say they're in the same neighborhood, and the ones here on the left are the ones that I just made in real time just a moment ago to illustrate for you, but I was using my headphones. You may be saying, well, wait a minute, headphones may be good because you're taking the room out of the equation. But depending upon which type of headphones, you've put on one type of headphone and then you've put on other types of phones and they sound different, right? With the same material. They also can color the audio. I believe the best way to do it is to have true reference monitors in a well-treated recording space. That's what they do in professional recording studios, but that is the reason. We have to put this all in perspective here. I mean, we are talking about 1 to 2, maybe 3 dB changes in certain frequency spaces. These are very minimal. You can hear the difference, barely. You can hear the difference if you're tuned to listen for the difference. But relatively speaking, these are pretty small changes. Again, and it all stems from the fact that he's got a well-treated recording space with proper acoustic treatment. So Giancarlo went to my website, he filled out the form, and then he sent me a raw audio file, an example of his voice recording, raw with no effects on it. And then what I do is put my processing, my custom processing, according to my ears. I make my decision from, it's my interpretation of what I think sounds good, and filter his voice with EQ, and I put compression and gating and things. I just optimize it the best I can. And I offer this to anyone. If you want to send me your voice, but I will say that, it doesn't have to be properly treated, the room. You could get a lot done. You could optimize a voice quite a bit, even if it's not the best setup. In this video, I'm showing you just how good a properly treated room could allow a voice to sound. But you can still do a lot with processing. So you can do just like Giancarlo did. Go to my website, it's lennyb.com, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to submit audio. But again, it's free for you to hear an example of what your voice sounds like with my processing. Just have to fill out the form and send me a file. All right, now let's listen to the final EQ work that I did. I'm going to play the raw file, and then I'm going to engage just the EQ so you can hear the difference between what that sounds like. So first we'll start with the raw file.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Mediante manopolo o selezione del profilo di guida, il conducente può modificare l'assetto della vettura, fino a 70 mm grazie alle sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali.
in my estimation, it actually sounds like to me that the EQ work that's being done with the final version, and again, I'm still listening in my headphones, it seems like it's even less of a change. So it's really, really a minimal change. And again, I think this is just a great illustration of the benefits of a properly treated recording space. But you can hear that still things are clearing out. I'm putting back some of the really low end in his voice, but clearing out that mud again, as you could see. And then I'm using a dynamic band number 5, where I had some of that work going on before. Here, let's switch back to Logic. You could see band number 5 is a dynamic band. It's only being activated. It's only lowering those frequencies around 2700 hertz. Let's see, what is it? Actually, I'll tell you specifically, around 2600 hertz. It's only attenuating those frequencies once they reach a particular threshold. That's the dynamics part of the F6. Again, an incredible tool, an amazing plugin by Waves, I think. And once you really understand what it does and how to use it, it's amazing. So let's look again. I'll keep the EQ engaged, but you can see how that band 5 is only working once the volume of that frequency space hits a particular threshold, which is set, because each of these bands has really a compressor that you can use within the band.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg.
Also, in the initial EQ setting that I made using the headphones, the first one I did live for you, I think I had 2 different bands, and this one is really more of a wide band, so it's getting more, kind of covering those 2 frequency spaces that I saw or that I felt were a little bit too intrusive, and it's attenuating those in a wider band. I mean, a little more of a gentle sound, but I do like the way it sounds even in my headphones.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg.
And before we continue, I'm going to play this one more time and take a look at that line, a very horizontal line. The data from our F6 and the real-time analyzer is, to me, it's confirming that I have made some pretty wise choices. I'm adding that data to my decision.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi.
After the F6, we're using the Schoeps Omni-Channel, which is a multi-processor plugin from Waves. And we are adding a little bit of saturation here. And this first row is a preamp emulator, and we're adding some saturation. We are adding a little bit of expansion, which is kind of like a more... I would call it a more delicate type of a gating, and we're we're reducing the noise between his words by about 12 dB, and it's working very gently and slowly and naturally to sound transparent. I don't want you to hear the gate opening and closing. The 4500 hertz range and up is being de-essed, and it's attenuating when it happens. It's probably coming down about 6 dB, and we are doing some EQ sweetening. I love the EQ and the Schoeps Omni-Channel, but you could see here, again, I believe because of such a well-treated, properly treated acoustic space, we don't even have to sweeten that much because the frequencies are already very balanced. So these little nudges that I'm doing, and let's look, 0.7 decibels, less than 1 dB, less than 1 dB. I think the bass we're putting up 1.6 dB. The highs, that air is being boosted just over 1 dB. These are really relatively small changes, but it makes a big difference in the sound. And I've got 2 compressors, a VCA compressor that we're running that is just taking off the loudest parts. It's just compressing those down, probably getting most of the time 1 dB of gain reduction, maybe sometimes 3, but I'm using this very lightly. We're only at a just under 3-to-1 ratio, and then I'm sure I'm using the opto compressor here. Yeah, the opto compressor, very low ratio, 2-to-1, and the attack and release are kind of medium, and we're just barely getting 1 dB of gain reduction. This is really just adding some warmth and roundness to the overall quality of his audio. I'm going to play for you in a second, but again, I want to draw your attention to why, and especially if you've watched a lot of my videos. I just want to show you. I think this is another one of the examples of a voiceover artist that has a recording that's kind of at the pinnacle. I love the way this sounds. I think it sounds huge. It sounds big. It sounds bold. I'm not doing a lot of processing. The stuff is kind of like finessing, right? A lot of the processing is just this finesse thing happening, but we're getting a great sound. And I just want to emphasize that I believe a lot of it, the majority of the reason why this sounds good is because of the proper acoustic treatment. He is removing all of those reflections in his room. Okay, let's listen to before and after the Schoeps Omnichannel. We're going to hear the F6 engaged. We'll have the Schoeps Omnichannel disengaged, and then I'm going to add in the Schoeps Omnichannel so you can hear the difference that just the Schoeps Omnichannel is making when we add it in.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Mediante manopolo o selezione del profilo di guida, il conducente può modificare l'assetto della vettura, fino a 70 mm grazie alle sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali.
Is this processed sound perfect for Giancarlo to use in any situation? Absolutely not. This is my interpretation of what I think sounds good. And, I think I've got a little bias to that broadcasty type of sound. So in my opinion, I like the way this sounds, but it may not be for every project. But when he wants a processed sound, this could work for that type of sound if it's for auditions or if he wants, depending upon what kind of a client he has. If there's a client who doesn't know anything about this, they may want a fully finished, processed, polished sound. Giancarlo did become a client. He ended up purchasing this processing preset from me. He likes the sound, and you can do that too. Just go to my website, you fill out the form if you just want to hear what your voice sounds like with my processing on it. And it doesn't matter if you've got a perfectly treated room or not. Either way, I'm going to share with you what I think you can do to improve. So just one of the things that I offer. Don't be shy. Please, if you speak another language, if you don't think you're up to par, if you haven't even ever made money in voiceover before, I think the folks that are just starting are the ones that can help the most. So I invite you to don't be shy and send me your audio. I'm going to put the link to where you would submit your audio in the description of the video. But one more thing, I'm going to play for you completely raw audio, and then I'll play for you the fully processed, so you can really hear the difference between the raw sound, which is pretty good to begin with, and then what the fully processed sound is like. I want you to hear the difference between the two, but I will do want to remind you, I've talked a lot about acoustic treatment and the importance and how sound travels in the room. I wrote my acoustic treatment for voiceover course because this is, I'll say it, I think this is probably the biggest challenge. It's the most common challenge, especially people recording at home have. They don't understand how acoustic treatment works, how sound travels in the room. Maybe they buy the wrong type of acoustic treatment, or they don't place it in the right area in their recording space. I would say that's definitely one of the biggest challenges. It's a very quick training course, but there's a lot of really good information, and I believe it's very affordable. But I promise you, if you are interested in improving your voice and you feel like either you know or you don't know a lot about acoustic treatment and you feel like this is something I have to learn about, you will find a lot of value in this course. Again, I'll put the link in the description. All right, let's listen to the before and after, the completely raw Giancarlo audio, and then we'll listen to the fully processed sound.
Le sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali nella nuova Touareg. Trattandosi di un SUV, la Touareg è di casa su vari percorsi, anche in fuoristrada. Mediante manopolo o selezione del profilo di guida, il conducente può modificare l'assetto della vettura, fino a 70 mm grazie alle sospensioni pneumatiche opzionali. 2 accumulatori di pressione riempiono le molle e sollevano la carrozzeria. In questo modo vengono commutati gli ammortizzatori in modalità off-road. A partire da 120 km/h o in modalità sport, la carrozzeria viene ribassata di 15 mm. Gli ammortizzatori diventano più rigidi per una dinamica di marcia ottimale.
The website is lennyb.com. My whole goal and effort is to try to help you make a better connection with your audience. And I've got free training courses. If you're maybe just starting to dip your toe into learning about this kind of stuff, lennyb.com. I've got free training courses. There's paid training courses. I'm releasing more training courses, and I'm trying to work on new ones all the time to help share my knowledge and information with you. If you've got any questions about any of the stuff that we've covered here, or about the acoustic treatment for voiceover training course, or the custom processing preset service, by all means, leave your question in the comments. I always appreciate hearing from you. That's what helps me come up with new ideas for new videos or new training courses. Let's make your voice sound better. I'm Lenny B. Thanks for watching.